Here's Barkley, right side, sprinting through the hole. Saquon Barkley is in. Touchdown, Philadelphia.
The rematch of the Super Bowl wasn't exactly the same as early February 2025, but the winner was the same. The Eagles are 2-0 after a 20-17 defensive beatdown of the Chiefs once again. The Chiefs' offense struggled, especially up front. Good morning, everybody. Dan Quinn is scheduled to hold a media availability at 3:30 today via Zoom with the beat reporters. I would expect we'll get some news on the health of Jayden Daniels then, certainly no later than 3:30. It's possible that we could get something before then, so keep it here all day, and we'll let you know if any news breaks. For those that went into hiding late Thursday night after the loss at Lambeau and perhaps are in the dark as to what I am talking about, Friday on Grant Paulson's show, Grant and Danny on 106.7 The Fan, our sister station, Grant mentioned on his show that day, Friday, that Jayden Daniels had an MRI or had imaging on his knee sometime after the game on Thursday night. Now, we know that Jayden was visibly limping after being tackled in the fourth quarter on that drive that made it 27-18 in the open field. It looked really like an ankle injury. It looked like he rolled his ankle. The replay showed him rolling his left ankle. So the MRI on his knee, if it happened, might be from that moment or maybe even a different moment. Now, that play many of you believe is a textbook hip drop tackle. It certainly looks like a hip drop tackle. I did talk to somebody yesterday that said by the letter of the rule, because the immediate tackle doesn't, land on the tackler himself, it might not be, definition by the rule hip drop, but it certainly had that motion of hip drop when he was tackled on that play. No call, by the way. Remember, they instituted the hip drop rule, and there were players that got fined last year. I don't know if anybody got penalized. I would assume that a couple of penalties were called, but they actually, remember, before 2024 emphasized that this was something that was going to lead to fines more than penalties. And it wasn't just on quarterbacks being tackled. It was any player. And look, the defense is already at a major disadvantage overall, which is why I think they chose to fine more than penalize. On Friday's show, I had Ben on the show. He was still in Green Bay, and he had discussed that Jayden was limping around the locker room pretty noticeably. Look, there is my concern in the moment was high ankle sprain. Everybody knows, I think, high ankle sprains, depending on the severity, can really be a problem. It can be weeks sometimes. But now that we know that perhaps something is of an issue with his knee, this is a whole new ball game. Now, since Friday, many of you, me included, sort of heard what Grant mentioned on his show, I guarantee you everybody has been digging. Everybody, the Schefters, the Rappaports of the world, the national guys, the local guys, all of us, everybody has been digging to find out what they can find out. And what I think most would say at this point is the team ain't talking. They've done this before. Remember with respect to Jayden's rib injury last year. There's not a lot of discussion, and they are buttoned up. This is a completely different organization than the one that existed previously. The last organization, they were fighting over each other to get news out to anybody that wanted it and they deemed to be, halfway credible. Not this organization. Totally different. Agent, player, team don't seem to be talking. Now, Grant did a good job of gathering this information, and we'll find out whether or not it's true. I mean, I've known Grant for a long time. I don't think that he would have mentioned it if there wasn't a good reason to mention it. So I at this point would believe that probably Jayden had some imaging done on his knee. Now, that does not mean that the news will be bad. It does not mean the news will be bad. Could mean that the news is completely benign. Everything's great. Could be that it's not bad, but there's something there that may prevent him from practicing, might prevent him from even playing in a game or two. But we won't know for sure until Quinn updates us at 3:30. And I think it's going to be hard in that moment for Quinn not to, either confirm or deny that an MRI was done and then to update everybody on Jaden's injury. Now, technically, they don't have to say anything until Wednesday leading into a Sunday game, where we would see Jaden on the injury report. But we'll see what happens today. I would imagine we'll know worst case at 3:33. If he starts talking at 3:30, we'll know at 3:31 and change what the deal is. Let's hope, keep fingers crossed, that Jaden Daniels is okay, because obviously that is a major season changer if it's serious. And even if it's a moderate injury that could cost some time, it will be very impactful after the loss the other night. Keep it here. My guess is that this is my guess. My guess is that Grant had it right and that there was probably some imaging. There was probably MRI, X-rays, something done on his knee. What the results are, I have no idea. But nobody's been talking. And I guarantee you, the Adam Schefters of the world, they have been trying to dig up what the deal is on this. And if they had learned something like, no, it didn't happen, they would have reported that, I think, as well. All right. Here we are, now a few days removed from Thursday night with a whole weekend of football to talk about. Wow, what a 1 o'clock window yesterday. Just incredible. It really, I know some of you get sick of me talking over the years about the NFL being a week-to-week league, and that week one tends to be the biggest head fake. Every single year it does. But nothing proved week to week more than yesterday's New York Giants offense, and Russell Wilson in particular, who was called by many, including yours truly, as done as a starting quarterback. And yet he went out and had a career high 450 yards in the game against the Dallas defense, which does look to be bad, especially against the pass. And I think they were more concerned about the run when the season began. Russell Wilson had himself a game until he didn't in overtime. And the Giant offense, which could generate nothing in D.C., scored 37 points and had 506 yards in Dallas yesterday. Now, the game went a complete 10-minute overtime. They had multiple possessions in the overtime. They just didn't do much with it until Russell Wilson threw an interception. By the way, anybody that thinks that Malik Neighbors isn't the next Jefferson Chase in that category hasn't watched him through his first 18, 19 games. My God, is he good. He is a true, superstar elite one receiver. That's what it looks like, boys and girls. Malik Neighbors, Chase, Jefferson, etc. He's in that class. But wow, what a football game, too. 41 points scored in the fourth quarter. We had that wild final 2 minutes. We had Brandon Aubrey and the Cowboys. This is the new NFL. I'm going to read something to you here in a moment. The new NFL essentially is, 60 and in should be money, not for our kicker, but you got to find kickers that essentially 55 and in should be yesterday's 45 and in. You got to make 55 and ins. And then you've got guys like Aubrey that can stretch it out to 65 to 70. That 64-yarder that he made at the end of regulation would have been good from 70 plus. And just the idea that an NFL team would be playing and running the ball to get to the other team's 46 or 47-yard line so that we can get them to a 64-yard field goal is insanity. But that's what they did. You know, in that last play from scrimmage, when they handed the ball off with 10 seconds to go to Javonte Williams, he went down after 3 yards. He could have easily gotten another 3, 4, 5 yards with time to spare, but they said, get a 3, 4 yards and get down. We're good. That's all we need. I mean, the state of kicking in the NFL, and I think most of you do know what's going on this year in particular. This from Mike Sando's column this morning, I think it's this morning in The Athletic. He writes about juiced footballs are changing game strategy or will change game strategy at this rate. And he writes, were you really shocked when Dallas's Brandon Aubrey drilled that 64-yard field goal to force overtime for the Cowboys against the Giants? Teams have made 5 kicks longer than 55 yards in each of the first 2 weeks of the season. That figure ranks tied for second out of 431 weeks since 2000 per True Media. Only week 4 of 2024 had more, 6 kicks. That figure is in danger with 2 games yet to play on Monday Night Football. We have 2 games tonight. We've got a true doubleheader, a 7 o'clock kick and a 10 o'clock kick. I think that's what it is, right, Max?
That's right.
Isn't the Tampa-Houston game a 7 o'clock kick?
Sure is.
And then we've got Chargers-Raiders. The Raiders are Washington's next opponent at 10 o'clock. Anyway, Sando writes, the footballs are juiced, figuratively speaking, but before the season, and we talked about this rule change a couple of times during the preseason, especially after the guy from Jacksonville kicked a 70-yarder. So before this year, teams have always used different footballs, special what they call kicking footballs, K-balls, that they had initially until 2020. They would be essentially handed these balls 30 minutes before kickoff and said, do whatever you want. You can massage them, you can break them in, you can brush them, whatever kickers do. In 2020, they increased the time allowed to 60 minutes before kickoff. And now, under rules adopted this year, teams received 60 footballs for the season before the start of training camp. Kickers have been able to work those footballs into the shape they want, learning exactly how they will respond. And those footballs, as Mike Sando writes, are definitely responding. This from one coach in the NFL, quote, the fact you get to kick with the ball in practice is a huge difference. You are not supposed to use pressure or stand on the ball or put it in a clothes dryer, but how can they tell what you're doing when you get to have these balls at your own facility? Teams have already made 15 kicks longer than 50 yards through 14 games of week 2. The third highest figure in any week since 2000. There were 2 weeks with 16 such kicks made last year. And here's where, the strategy kicks in. When a team takes over, especially let's just say after a touchback and they've got the ball at the 35, and now reasonably for several teams, field goal range is 15 yards away. 3 points is 15 yards away. How do you play that? Do you play it aggressively? Do you play it where we're going to take some risks on over-the-top plays? We can't play bend, don't break in the middle of the field, because the middle of the field, in terms of field goal range, has now essentially expanded or, shrunk, however you'd view it. But you've got 15 yards after starting at the 35-yard line to get into field goal range. I mean, 20 yards max. People are kicking 60-yarders, 61-yarders, 62-yarders with regularity now. Yeah, it's, you don't want to give up 6, but the idea of giving up 3 isn't pleasant either. But we are on pace here for a record number of long field goals, and the juiced balls, so to speak, are a big part of it, not to mention the kickers and facilities and field conditions. All of that has played into it. But the juiced balls and what we're seeing now, they, I think, are complementary. I think we certainly have a reason why this year looks different. But that was wild to see them playing Brandon Aubrey The Cowboys playing it so conservatively when, they're 68 yards out on a field goal and then not taking, they had a timeout, not dropping Dak back and trying to get a chunk play to get into what we used to consider to be reasonable field goal range. Reasonable for this guy apparently is 64 yards out. That game was really insane. I don't know what it speaks to in terms of the largesse of the games previously played, the Giants game against Washington, the Cowboys game against the Eagles. It says something, I think, about the Dallas defense at this point. And it might say something about the Washington defense at this point. But Thursday night, certainly against a much better team, it wasn't pleasant. But that game was great. Then you had, just some wild finishes. In the 1 o'clock window, you had the punt return followed by the kickoff return for a touchdown in Miami. Antonio Gibson, a part of the kickoff return. You had the Joe Burrow injury, but Jake Browning, who threw 3 picks, then leading a 95-yard drive for the go-ahead touchdown. They beat Jacksonville 31-27. Just some really insane games. The 49ers hanging on to beat the Saints 26-21. Did you see what happened to the Steelers with rookie running back Caleb Johnson out of Iowa not knowing the rule on the kickoff return where it hits in the landing zone? He thought since it hit in the landing zone and went into the end zone that the ball was dead like it would be in college. That is a terrible, terrible, game-changing play. He let it go into the end zone, and Seattle jumped on it for a touchdown on special teams. You had this insane finish in Indy. Indy's 2-0, missed field goal with, some contact with the center, 15-yard penalty, second shot for Spencer Schrader on a field goal, wins it for the Colts. The Cardinals and Panthers, this game was over until it wasn't, where the Panthers actually recovered an onside kick and had the ball late. And then we got to the Eagles and the Chiefs. And that's where I'm going to take just a moment on the tush push. I'll do that when we come back. We'll go around the NFL and get into more detail, and then we will come back to Jaden and his injury. And I've got a bit of, 10, 15 minutes after kind of watching the game on the All-22. Not that I did a film breakdown, but I got some observations from Thursday night that I want to make. We'll do all of that and more on the show today. Ben Standig at noon. Jay Gruden, you'll hear part of my conversation with Jay following the game on Friday. He had some thoughts as to what he watched, especially offensively for the team. We'll get to all of that and more. Kevin Sheehan Show, Team 980, theteam980.com.
Tush push hurts forward. He's got the first down. And the Eagles are going to win this game.
I am done with the tush push, guys. It's a hard play to officiate like we've been talking about. So they either ruled progress or that Hurts was down. Really hard to see what's happening with the football. We're inside 2, so replay has looked at this, and they've determined that there was no fumble.
That was Dean Blandino, the Fox referee, official, expert. He's tired of it. The Eagles yesterday ran 6 tush pushes in the game, brotherly shoves, whatever you want to call it. 6 of them in the marquee game of the week. The NFL's so smart usually. I can't believe they are allowing this play to exist. The marquee game of the weekend, really the marquee game of the early season, a rematch of the Super Bowl between, by the way, a team that, remember, Mike North, the schedule maker, told us in the spring is now the biggest draw in the NFL, the Kansas City Chiefs. They have passed the Cowboys in recent years as the single biggest draw of every NFL team. I just can't believe that they did not vote. They were 2 votes short to abolish this play rather than putting their marquee games. And by the way, Philly's got another 6 to 7 standalone games this year. Looking at their schedule, they play. All right, they play the Rams at 1. They got a Thursday night game. They got a Monday night game at Lambeau. They've got a Sunday night game against Detroit. They've got a standalone game at Dallas 425. They've got the Black Friday game. They've got another Monday night game. They've got a late season Fox standalone against Buffalo. I think I just listed 7 games. They got 6 to 7 games left of Philadelphia in sort of standalone spots. And they're going to put that product at risk. Look, the ratings are going to be phenomenal. It's not like people are turning off their television sets. I understand that. But why? It tarnishes the product. And I just can't believe that they have allowed this to go on. They ran 6 of them yesterday. 6 of them. 4 on 4th down, 2 on 3rd down. I really believe that this is going to be it. Look, of course, when a Skins fan has a problem with the tush push, the brotherly shove, it's all about, the Eagles. I just think it's bad for the game. I've talked about this for a while, not because it works for one team, more than any other, but because of a few factors. Number one, the play is not officiated properly. They don't call the many false starts, the many offsides. By the way, both sides, defense lining up offsides, offense lining up offsides. The play, for whatever reason, is not officiated properly. Now, even if you say, well, if all they need to do is officiate it properly, there's still the issue for me, and that play's being ignored in terms of being officiated properly. It's a hard play to officiate because of the rugby nature, the scrum nature of the alignment. But for me, and I tweeted this out yesterday, that in addition to the play not being legislated from a rules standpoint properly and borderline being ignored, I wrote that the play slows the pace of game too. Now, I understand that in terms of the clock, it's not slowing the game down. The game's still lasting 3 hours. It's still 60 minutes. The clock's rolling, etc. What I really, I was looking for maybe a better way to say it. It's like, it's not apples to apples, but it's like, back in the day when a pitcher tried to hold a runner on first and you got 3, 4, 5, 6 throws over to first. Now that's limited. It's not the same because there is progress made by Philadelphia during the play. Well, you could make the case that a pitcher holding a runner is progress too. The pace to me is about, you've basically got 6 plays yesterday that are plays that aren't interesting to watch. And they run them not just on 4th down, but they run them on 3rd down. So you can get a minute 20 of clock, 40 plus 40, the 40-second clock plus another 40 seconds. So you can get a minute 20 of clock to roll through with 2 quarterback sneaks pushed by players behind him. I just don't think anybody wants to watch it. They got rid of the extra point, or they made the extra point more interesting and pushed it back because they thought it was such a non-event. That, I would suggest, there was not an outcry to get rid of the PAT from 20 yards out. Everybody understood it was the way to cap a 6-point touchdown play. They've tried to increase the excitement level and the play itself of being an active play, the kickoff return, with all of the rule changes in recent years. This play is slow, it's different, and it's like taking 6 plays off from a game. That's really what I meant by pace. I understand that the pace of the game, the actual time, that runs off the clock isn't any different. Although you could argue that Philly runs that clock down more often than not to nearly the end of the play clock, first trying to draw the defense offside, all the while that they're lined up offside occasionally. And then you get the false starts that aren't called. Here's the other part of this, too, from a Philadelphia standpoint. Philly fans are going to bitch and complain that everybody, especially NFC East teams and their fans, are just, whiners. They don't want Philly to run it. For me, I can only speak for myself. If it were Jacksonville, and Jacksonville was a great team, and we had to watch Jacksonville a lot on standalone games, and they were running it, I would feel the exact same way. I really would. Now, the fact that it is Philly certainly adds a little bit more, I guess, in venom and emotion with this play. But I'd be calling for this if it were, the Eagles or, the Browns. Here's something, though, to consider. I've talked about this for the last year when this conversation's come up. Philly's losing a lot of yardage by not running plays on 3rd and 2 and 4th and 1. I mean, I'm not about to get into a heavy analytics discussion here. It's all intuitive, right? They have the best offensive line, you could argue, in football. They've got a dual threat quarterback, and you could argue they've got the best running back in the NFL and the best wide receiver pair in the NFL. How many times on 3rd and short, 4th and short do we see massive explosive plays? Defense is all bunched up trying to stop. Here comes, Saquon Barkley. All he's got to do is get through that, first line of defense. Boom, gone. Or play action, big play. I think Philadelphia has missed out. I mean, somebody is going to do this at some point, although I don't know if anybody, I'm sure people have thought about it. I'm sure Philadelphia's thought about it. I mean, what are they missing in yardage? It's got to be, it's got to be in the hundreds of yards per year, I would think. Now, the trade-off is that you've got a guarantee on a 1st and 10. And do you want to give up that guarantee of a new set of downs for the potential for an explosive play? It turns, watching the Eagles yesterday, man, there's something about them. Same thought I had last year during the early mid portions of the season. They just don't strike you offensively as super explosive. Now, part of it is when 6 of your snaps are tush pushes, there's no chance for an explosive play. But with all of their talent offensively, it does seem like sometimes they are just playing not to lose offensively. They've got a great defense. See what that defense looks like with Jalen Carter back in the lineup. My God, Kansas City, they may have fixed one tackle spot. They still are not able to handle Philadelphia up front. That game, was one of those games won at the line of scrimmage. Philadelphia's defense against Kansas City's offensive line in particular. But I hate the play aesthetically. To me, it doesn't look like football. It looks like rugby. That's more the emotional side. The more, thought out is if you're not going to officiate the play properly, then get it the hell out of the game. Or officiate it properly, and maybe that will slow some of it down because maybe there's a better chance of the Eagles being stopped more often than not if it's officiated properly. And I really hate it because it's like, here we go, 3rd and 2, and for the next minute 20 of clock, we're going to watch 2 of these plays that are just not very exciting. And not everything is exciting. Not every play is exciting in football, but there's the possibility of exciting on every play except for this play. And that's what I meant really by the pace. It like brings it to a halt. It's like they got to 3rd and 2. GD, you got to be kidding me. Here we go, a minute 20 of clock, 2 plays, and we're going to see them end up with a 1st and 10 after 2 1-yard gains. Or, maybe 2 plays, 3 yards, whatever it turns out to be. I do think, though, that somebody, it wouldn't be that hard, to look at the potential of 3rd and short and 4th and short and not running normal plays and what they are giving up explosive-wise offensively for, again, I understand the guarantee of a continued possession, the guarantee of a 1st and 10. Might take 2 plays to get there, but it's a guarantee. The bottom line is they are in 1st and 8, 2nd and 8. Once they get to 8, they're good if they get there by 3rd down on the first 2 plays. They have to generate 8 yards of offense on their first 2 plays, and they are staying on the field for the next 2. That, to me, is where I think, at least psychologically, even if not literally, the game just slows. And I think the NFL is going to do something about it. I really do. I actually think this is going to be 100% the last year of this. You can't have your marquee games, and Philly's in a lot of them because they are good. They're the defending champs. They are a really good football team. Hate to say it, but they're a really good organization, top to bottom, okay? And so they're going to more likely than not be here for a while. They're going to have 7, 8, 9 marquee games a year minimum. Can't watch that. Can't have that. NFL's got to fix that. There's no chance they don't have the votes next year. Unless they, in season, say this play has to be handled from a rule standpoint differently. We're going to have to start enforcing false start offsides rules on this play. And in hopes of that the Eagles will go backwards and now it's 3rd and 6 or, 4th and 6, or, the defense will get stops because Philadelphia is not cheating on the play. They're not, because I was listening to, God, who was I listening to late last night? I'm forgetting now, a former coach. It may have been Rex Ryan, may have been. And he said, it's clearly being taught for the 2 guards to move early. He's like, you can see it. It's in unison. They are jumping. They are committing penalties, but it's being taught that way because it's not being enforced. And he said, no problem with that until they start to enforce it, get every advantage you can get. And Philadelphia has the advantage of a quarterback whose, legs are the strongest in the league. They've got big, strong guys up front. And then on top of that, they're getting the advantage because the referees are allowing them to get that advantage. But that's not the only reason I want it out. I think it's really not good to watch a Sunday afternoon game between the 2 Super Bowl teams and to see 6 plays, which if you add it up, that's 240 seconds of football, where essentially the action grinds to a complete and utter disgusting halt. It's painful to watch. If they had odds on will it exist next year, I'd bet everything I have. Not everything I have. I'd certainly bet real money that it is out next year and that this is the last year we're going to have to put up with it. I wish they could do something in season about it since we're only here in week 2. With that said, man, they are good up front, aren't they? They are really good in the trenches where it matters. Not to mention they got playmakers all over the field. But it's fun to watch the Eagles at the line of scrimmage with the players they have. And as far as Kansas City goes, honestly, I can't imagine that this is like the end of Kansas City. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. They have opened with 2 really good opponents. I don't know that they did enough with just Josh Simmons drafted to really fix that offensive line, which was the reason they got bum rushed in the Super Bowl. And really the reason they lost yesterday for the most part. I mean, the Kansas City offense, how many yards? less than 300 yards, 17 points, 4 of 12 on third down. That's not what you expect from the Kansas City offense. It's looked a little rough. They don't have Rashee Rice. Right now their receivers, the best they got really is Kelsey, who dropped that pass at the goal line, tipped it up. It got picked off by what's his face, Makuba, and returned. That was obviously the play of the game. But Philly's 2-0 and Kansas City's 0-2. Philly gets the Rams at home this coming Sunday, and then they go to Tampa. It's harvesting nuts this time of the year, boys. As Eddie Jordan once said, it's harvesting nuts because you don't know right now if you're a good team, but you've got to make sure that the early season nuts are harvested so that if you become a really good team, you can do something about it. And that will be the challenge for our team after a loss is we don't know what we have at this point. We think we know some things, but you don't really know at this point, and you got to get some wins. They harvested some nuts last year on the way to 7-2, and when they became a better team and a near unstoppable team at times offensively, they could do something about it because they were playoff bound. That's why this game against the Raiders Sunday is a huge game. You get that benefit of the team that has the short week. You saw it last night with Minnesota. Minnesota on a short week. Back home, that was a brutal performance by J.J. McCarthy. He's had, in 8 quarters, he's had 1 NFL quarter. That's it. But it's absurd to think that anybody would have, a true conclusion on J.J. McCarthy after 2 NFL games. Not to mention he had his first baby this week. So I'm sure there was a lot going on in his life. All right, we'll go around the NFL when we come back. We'll get to our team at 11. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. When we talk about the NFL, by the way, as we do pretty much every day, it is brought to you by Paramount Plus. You can't count on much, but you can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. Stream your local NFL game live every Sunday all season long, starting at just $30 for your first year. That's like $2.50 a month. Visit ParamountPlus.com/NFL to get started today.
All right, happy Monday, everybody. Here's what's happening. We take a look around the NFC East with Washington on a mini bye after taking on the Packers on Thursday Night Football. The Giants and Cowboys looked like it was straight out of Maction after an offensive explosion in the second half. A 37-37 overtime thriller ends with Brandon Aubrey coming in clutch for the Cowboys as the game expired in overtime. The Eagles, they handle the Chiefs 20-17 in Fox's Game of the Week. Jalen Hurts with a subpar performance with only 101 passing yards and completing 1 pass beyond 6 yards from scrimmage. Saquon Barkley with a quiet 94 yards and 1 touchdown. Again, Eagles win 20-17. To baseball, the Nats, they beat the Pittsburgh Pirates by a score of 4-3. Cade Cavalli gives up 3 runs right out of the gate, was able to stop the bleeding. Nats get 3 back in the second and are able to come in clutch in the 8th inning when it mattered with Dalen Lyle double driving in James Wood. Boys in red and white shift their focus to the Atlanta Braves tonight. Mitch Parker on the bump for the Nats versus Spencer Strider. First pitch at 6:45. Nats on deck with Charlie and Dave at 6:15. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch Denton's office throughout all football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
from the Dallas 48. Wilson protected, heaving one, wants Neighbors, Malik Neighbors, touchdown Giants! He dropped it in the bucket from 48. Aubrey, does he have enough? On the way, it is! Good! That's why they trusted him. Aubrey got it into overtime and now wins it. What a ball game. Cowboys in OT.
All right, let's go around the NFL in a little bit more detail. Look, it's very possible we'll look back on this Week 2 game and just say, what an incredible, exciting back and forth football game played by two bad football teams. It's possible, for sure. There is talent on offense. I think the Giant defense, it's so crazy that I'm going to say this because they gave up 40 points. But if you were watching the game, man, they have some real talent defensively. I mean, true game impacting talent, from, obviously Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, the rookie, obviously, in Abdul Carter. They just have players defensively, really good players, and they gave up 40. Of course, 20 of those came in the fourth quarter. The Giants scored 21. This was such an entertaining game. I wrote down some things. Russ's 450 yards passing is a career high. His 235 first half yards passing was the most in 7 years for the Giants when Eli was there. His fourth down touchdown pass to Robinson was ridiculous. The one he dropped in the bucket to Neighbors was insane. And, we talked about already, Dallas running the ball with Javonte Williams and telling him to get down for a 64-yard field goal is just insane in this day and age. Oh, here was something that I haven't said about the game. So, Pickens ended up with 5 catches, 68 yards, including that touchdown that gave him the lead, 34-30 with, under 2 minutes to go, and then it went 37-34 and then back the other way. Man, CeeDee Lamb, it's funny because I've never been a massive CeeDee Lamb guy. I recognize how good he is, Cowboy fans. Just relax. He's really good. But I've never thought of him as Chase. Never thought of him as A.J. Brown or, Jefferson. He's really good. He generates a lot of separation. Pickens doesn't. And yet the reason he makes those catches, his arms are so long. But he is more of a chest catcher. And there was a lot of discussion late in the week, we didn't touch on this, that there was a lot of highlights that people picked out from Pickens' first game against the Eagles where he basically just took plays off. And apparently that's an issue in the locker room. I don't know how this will work out. He got targeted 9 times, 5 catches, 68 yards in the game. I don't know. I'm not blown away by Pickens. The other thing, I don't know if you've noticed this in Dallas's first 2 games. I hope somebody does a deep dive on this, an ESPN guy, maybe Bill Barnwell or somebody like that, or maybe Ben Solak, the analytics guy. Dak Prescott's play action drop back looks like the 1970s. Like he is back 8 yards. 9 yards sometimes on the drop back. Has anybody else noticed? They're setting up the pocket much deeper. His drop back is much further than most quarterbacks in today's day and age. It's like, we'll drop him back, we'll move the pocket back, and that'll give our receivers even more time, even though he's throwing it from 4 or 5 yards deeper behind the line of scrimmage. Maybe I'm wrong. It just looks that way to me. It looks very odd, the drop back for Prescott. By the way, I think yesterday's game was the first overtime game of 2025 with the new overtime rules. And the Giants won the toss, and they played defense to start. That, I think, will be commonplace now with the new rule that says a touchdown doesn't end it on the opening drive. It's kind of like the college thing. Except it's actually, it is kind of like the college thing, but it's even different because you've got the whole field. But you want to know what you need when you take your possession of the football. And if you need a touchdown or you need a field goal and you're not in field goal range, you'll then have 4 downs to do it instead of 3. And, punt doesn't become an option when you're losing the game if you're losing it. So the first opportunity with these new overtime rules, I don't think there was an overtime rule, an overtime game in week 1, right? Pretty sure there was not. I'm looking to see. Yeah, there was not an overtime game in week 1. That was the first overtime game of the year. And the first coin toss, the team that won the toss actually decided to kick and play defense first. And I think that's what you'll see, which is totally different than what we've experienced over the years. Russ, by the way, in overtime, as great as he was in regulation, not only did he have the balloon ball interception, but he also had a play in which he, lost control of the ball. The ball went backwards. And the kid from Arizona State, Cam Scatterbu, who looked really good yesterday, what a hustle play to get over there and knock the ball out of bounds before anybody could recover it. Because if the Cowboys had recovered that, they would have been in field goal range. Just crazy game, man. I like Javonte Williams. I've always liked him since Denver drafted him out of North Carolina. I've always thought that he, had a great running style. And, his 2 games in Dallas, he's looked pretty good. He's averaging 4.6 yards per carry. He's got 151 yards in 2 games, 3 touchdowns. He's also got, 8 catches on the season. I think that he, I like Dowdle. I thought Dowdle was okay, but I think he's their best back. His issue has been staying healthy. He's missed some games. He missed some games early in his Denver career, a bunch of them. Dallas survives 40-37. Again, the memorable game, for Cowboy Giant fans, that rivalry, it'll be like, do you remember that game, the Russell Wilson game? But what will it mean towards the end of the season? Dallas appears to really have issues defensively. And the Giants, I think, are strong defensively. But I still think offensively, I don't know, unless Russ just had a wake-up call after the first week of the season. Dallas actually with the Bears on the road next week to try to get to 2-1. Speaking of the Bears, they were in Detroit yesterday.
Goff for the end zone. Touchdown, St. Brown. Goff to the end zone, St. Brown. 4th and goal, fake to Montgomery.
Too easy.
To St. Brown, into the end zone. His 3rd touchdown today, and there he goes. Right into the lead zone.
So the Lions could barely score at Lambeau against the Packers in week 1. And yesterday, they couldn't be stopped. 511 yards, 52 points on the day. They look like the Lions from the last couple of years. Jared Goff, 334, 23 of 28, 5 touchdowns, no picks, a near perfect passer rating, a near perfect QBR. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, who Green Bay completely shut down last week, they combined to go 23 rushes for 151 yards. And then you had, Amon-Ra and Jamison Williams and Sam. Everybody's catching passes. Everybody. Lions looked like the Lions. And, man, I know week 1's a major head fake. But for 2 consecutive games, Green Bay completely shut down very good offensive football teams, including the Lions, who showed that they're far from dead without Ben Johnson. Meantime, Caleb Williams, another rough outing, took a bunch of sacks, had a bunch of incompletions, and the Bears are 0-2 after getting destroyed by Detroit. We got other games to get to in the 1 o'clock window. We'll do that next. Then we'll talk a little bit about the Green Bay game upon further review. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, the team980.com.
Browning, Cable, one hand! Are you serious? Mitchell Tinsley!
Remember Mitchell Tinsley was with us for a while, and then he had that incredible performance in Landover in the preseason. The Bengals kept him. They did not expose him to practice squad, etc. He had a great one-handed touchdown catch yesterday in Cincinnati's 31-27 win over Jacksonville. The big news, of course, out of that game, Joe Burrow. Hold on. About to sneeze. Nearly just did. Joe Burrow needs toe surgery, out 3 months. 3 months. What will Cincinnati do? Will they stick with Jake Browning as the quarterback? It's possible. It's also possible they might trade for you-know-who in Atlanta or try to get Jameis Winston out of New York. Jake Browning came in for Joe Burrow in the first half. He was 21 of 32, 241, 2 touchdowns, three interceptions, but he did lead a 15-play, 92-yard drive that ended in him quarterback sneaking with 18 seconds to go. And the Bengals are 2-0 for the first time in a long time. They are at Minnesota this coming weekend. Jacksonville really blew an opportunity, that is for sure. Trevor Lawrence, 2 interceptions in the game. De'Ami Brown had a touchdown catch, 5 catches, 57 yards. He has started off looking to be a factor for Jacksonville. All right, let's go to Baltimore for the return of Joe Flacco and the celebration of 30 years of the Ravens in Baltimore.
On 2nd and 10, they're going to throw it again for Hopkins, and DeAndre Hopkins has got it. Cam Mitchell in on the coverage. And the 33-year-old is in the end zone for a second time this year.
So I watched a lot of this game. Had this one and the Giants-Cowboys game on primarily at 1. I had a lot of my smell test picks and a lot of my action tied up into both of these games. Smell test, by the way, another winning weekend, 8-6, but it did not start that way on Friday night. 0-3, and then 8-3, 5-2 on Saturday, and 3-1 yesterday. Might have to steer clear of those Friday night games. They tend to be weird. But, Baltimore last week against Buffalo rushed for 238 yards. In watching this game, Cleveland never really had a shot because of Baltimore's defense and because they couldn't run the ball. They couldn't get anybody open. Flacco was under duress and really looked shaky for sure after last week looking great. Just too much pressure. But one of the more intriguing things about Cleveland this year, and I mentioned it last week, when they held Cincinnati to 141 total yards, 2 yards in the second half, is just how much talent they have defensively. My God, Myles Garrett disrupted this game just like he disrupts every game. The Ravens, after rushing for 238 yards last week, rushed for 45 this week. Derrick Henry, 11 carries, 23 yards. Even Lamar Jackson only rushed for 13 yards. Now, the problem is that Cleveland turned the ball over a couple of times and the game got completely sideways. They were never going to win the game because they had not enough offense to do it. Lamar did throw 4 touchdowns, sometimes on short fields. But, man, Cleveland's defense. Remember last year, Cleveland's defense was really good, but they had no quarterback play, and it just killed them, especially when Deshaun Watson was playing. Schwartz is a good defensive coordinator and has been everywhere he's been, and they have talent. Myles Garrett in 2 games now, 3.5 sacks in 2 games, and I think it's something like 6 tackles for loss. Let me just see. Let me get that exactly, because I think he had 4 last week. That stat's not there. 3.5 sacks. I think it's like 5 or 6 tackles for loss in 2 games against Cincinnati and Baltimore. The Ravens bounced back off that season-opening loss. They are 1-1. Let's go to New Orleans for Mac Jones leading the 49ers with Brock Purdy out.
So special to see the impact we can have.
Yep, no doubt about that as they find Jennings running free. Jawan Jennings going to take it in for a San Francisco touchdown.
No Kittle, no Ayuk, no Purdy, no problem. The 49ers get the win over the Saints 26-21. And Mac Jones, kind of like Daniel Jones and a few others, including Russell Wilson's resuscitation yesterday, you just never know with these quarterbacks. Mac Jones had one of the best games of his career, 26 of 39, 279, 3 touchdowns, no picks in the game, and the 49ers win it. Christian McCaffrey played. That's big. 13 carries, 55 yards, 6 catches, 52 yards. He had a touchdown in the game, and the 49ers are 2-0. They're banged up. Big game, actually, early in the season, next Sunday in the afternoon window, San Francisco hosting Arizona, because they'll still be without Purdy, but Mac Jones with Kyle, they can coach him up. That's for sure, that offensive staff. Let's go to Pittsburgh for the Seahawks and the Steelers.
Oh, bad bounce goes through the hands of Caleb Johnson. He may have touched that ball. That would be a live ball. Let's see what the ruling is here. It is a touchdown. It's a touchdown. Oh, Seattle gets the score.
Wow, that was a devastating play. Seattle early in the fourth quarter had taken a 17-14 lead. Pittsburgh about to get the ball back. And Caleb Johnson, love him coming out as a running back from Iowa. He's back on kickoff returns, and he let it bounce in the landing zone and into the end zone where he thought it was the college rule once it hit the end zone, touchback. Nope, you're in the pros now, Caleb. He should have been coached up on this. If you're going to put him back there, you got to be coached up on this. You know, it's partly on him for sure, and maybe he was coached up. Is Danny Smith still the special teams coach, or did he retire? I'm forgetting.
Great question.
Look up the Steelers staff to see if Danny Smith's still there, because Danny Smith is one of my all-time favorite people who coached in this town, especially during the horrible era. Great guy.
Danny Smith is in his 13th season with the Steelers as special teams coordinator.
That had to be crushing to him because he is about every detail. He's the guy that when Tomlin has some issues and wants to pay attention to somebody, Danny Smith is usually the guy. But he let it go into the end zone. Seattle recovered it. By the way, go back and watch that. Did he really have possession in the end zone? I don't know if the guy that recovered it, his name was Helani, in the end zone, really had full possession, but they gave him credit for it. They gave Seattle the touchdown, 24-14. And the Steelers, after looking really good on offense last week, but not good on defense, struggled on offense in this game and still had major issues on defense. Sam Darnold threw for nearly 300, and Kenneth Walker, the third, rushed for over 100 in Seattle's 31-17 win over the Steelers. Let's go to Nashville for the Rams and Titans.
Nakua shifting. They'll give it to him, and he's got it, and then some. Nakua is going to take it all the way. Touchdown, Rams.
You know what's so impressive about Puka Nakua is just how strong he is, man. What is he, 6'3", 220? But he is super strong. That was a fly sweep that ended up breaking for 45 yards and a touchdown. This game was competitive going in to the fourth quarter. The Rams held a 20-16 lead heading into the fourth quarter. But this is a team we got to keep an eye on. The Rams have so much talent on both sides of the ball. Stafford's health is key, clearly. 23 of 33 for 298 for Stafford. 2 touchdowns, had a pick in the game. Devontae Adams led him this week, 6 catches, 106 yards, and a touchdown. Nakua, another 8 catches. And then on defense, man, you know, Byron Young had 2 sacks. Kobe Turner had a sack. Cam Curl had a sack, but they got Jared Verse. They've got, you know, they got players defensively and young players. The Rams are 2-0. 3 teams in the NFC West start out 2-0, and the Rams go to Philly this coming week in what will be one of the games of the week. Cam Ward in his second game, 19 of 33, 175 yards, a touchdown, no picks, but he did lose a fumble and get sacked 5 times. And if you saw his touchdown pass, it was the no. Oh, okay, that's fine for now, where he throws across his body, rolling right to the far corner of the left part of the end zone, and he completed it for a touchdown. Rams to 2-0, the Titans to 0-2. Let's go to Hard Rock in South Florida for the Dolphins and the Patriots.
Herringer gets it away. Another good boot, driving Washington back to his 27-yard line. He bobbles it for a second, still going as he spins forward, trying to get to the outside. Washington gets by the punter, down the sideline. Malik Washington to the house. Touchdown, Miami. 74 yards. Patterson to Gibson, who gets a running start on that catch. Gibson across the 30. Antonio Gibson still going. Did he return the favor? Down the sideline. You gotta be kidding me. Back to back. A 90-yard touchdown.
Yeah, punt return followed by a kickoff return. That was Antonio Gibson. Remember Antonio Gibson, a 90-yard kickoff return. Man, we are seeing a lot more kickoff returns through the first 2 weeks. That extra 5 yards on the touchback has changed that play entirely. In that game, man, the bottom line was New England was in trouble after that punt return. They get a kickoff return, they get a turnover and a field goal, and they hang on with a 33-27 win. Miami much better than last week offensively. Tua threw for 315 in the game. Tyreek Hill had 6 catches for 109 yards. New England, on the flip side, Drake May, high completion percentage, 19 of 23, 230, 2 touchdowns, no picks, no back-breaking plays, and the Patriots are 1-1 after a 33-27 win over the Dolphins on the road. Let's go to New York, or Jersey in this case, for Buffalo and the Jets.
And went back out there, but expect him to ice it throughout this game.
Thank you, Trace. Look at that move by Cook. Oh, it's still going. James Cook to the end zone for a touchdown and a brilliant run.
Yeah, they gave Cook a bunch of money over the summer. 21 carries, 132 yards, 2 touchdowns. Justin Fields in this one after, that really, really strong game to open up this season. He actually finished the game on the sideline in this game. They lose 30-10, the Jets do. Buffalo looks really good this early in the season. Certainly the heavy favorite to win the AFC East. And by the way, given their one win already over Baltimore, certainly the favorite to be the 1 seed. 2 weeks in with the Chiefs at 0-2, with them owning a win over the Ravens, they're 2-0. They are the favorite not only to win the Super Bowl, but to be the 1 seed in the AFC. They get the Thursday night game this week against the Dolphins in Buffalo. Let's go to Indianapolis for Denver and the Colts.
Rhodes will snap. Sanchez will hold. And the kick is no good. Denver's gonna win. Denver's gonna win.
Oh, is there a penalty down in the middle of the field? Right by the center.
Oh my goodness.
They must have touched the center.
It's against Denver. Now it is a 45-yard field goal with no time left. This for the win. Spencer Schrader. It's good, and the Colts have won.
Yeah, so like in Dallas, by the way, although Dallas was down 3, Dallas was down 3 for the 64-yard field goal. Same situation in that Indianapolis was down 28-26 late. And they were at midfield. They were at the Denver 43-yard line with a minute 45 to go, and then decided essentially to burn the rest of the clock, run Jonathan Taylor for about 2 yards in total, and kick a 60-yard field goal with Spencer Schrader. It's remarkable. The Dallas game, Indianapolis the same. They're playing for a 60-yard field goal. I mean, they're hoping Jonathan Taylor rips a run, but they're not trying to get a big play to try to get into reasonable field goal range. And Schrader missed the kick from 60. But you heard the penalty, leverage by the defender using the center. That's a no-no, 15 yards. Schrader got another opportunity from 45 yards out and won the game. And the Indianapolis Colts with Daniel Jones at quarterback, he was 23 of 34 for 316 yards and a touchdown, no interceptions, only one sack. He had another excellent football game. By the way, Tyler Warren's going to be a star, their tight end. They got weapons, man, and several of them. You know, they got Michael Pittman Jr., Alec Pierce, Josh Downs. They got the big tight end Mo Alley Cox to go with Tyler Warren, and then they got Jonathan Taylor. He was 25 for 165 yards in the game. The Colts are 2-0. Denver falls to 0-2. Their kicker missed a field goal before the game-winning drive that would have put them up in that moment 31-26 and would have forced Indy to score a touchdown on that final drive. I think the Colts are well coached too. I think Shane Steichen's good. I think they got some good players. If they can get this kind of, play from Daniel Jones, the Colts are certainly going to be a threat to win the AFC South. Let's finish up our Around the NFL. Let's go to Minneapolis for the Sunday night game between the Falcons and the Vikings.
And Algier walks into the end zone for the game's first touchdown.
All right, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, great backs. My favorite back in the NFL to watch run the football is Bijan Robinson. There's nobody that looks more effortless running the football, and I don't think there's anybody that has better vision and better cutting ability than Bijan Robinson. By the way, last week Atlanta against Tampa Bay. The defenses of Green Bay and Tampa Bay, and we'll see Tampa's defense tonight in week one, held great backs to basically nothing. Gibbs got nothing against Green Bay last week, and Bijan got nothing against Tampa, like 24 yards on 12 carries. Last night, 22 for 143 against a good Minnesota defense, not to mention another 3 catches out of the backfield. He is, capable of doing that. During the game last night, Saquon Barkley was interviewed about Bijan Robinson, and he said, I think, I'm paraphrasing. He said, I think I'm really good. He said, but the best back in the league is Bijan Robinson. Saquon Barkley said that about Robinson. They also have the best backup running back in the league who'd be the starter, in the 25 places, Tyler Algier. He went 16 for 76. Penix Jr. didn't have to do that much. I like Penix Jr. I thought he held on to the ball too long last night and watching him. I thought he overthrew and missed a couple of receivers. He was 13 to 21 for 135, took 3 sacks, had a very low QBR, 27.1. This, the matchup last night between McCarthy and Penix Jr. First of all, the last time McCarthy Jr. before last week played in a game was against Penix Jr. in the national championship game. 2 of the guys from the 24 first round, and they both were, Penix Jr. was not great, and McCarthy was flat out horrible in the game, as he was for the first 3 quarters against the Bears. Too early, 2 games. Stop it. If you want to already eliminate in your mind that J.J. McCarthy can't play. He was not my favorite, as most of you know. I didn't see it. I didn't see a first-round, quarterback. He's a first-round competitor. There's no doubt about that. But, man, you can see he is struggling. He got sacked 6 times, completed 11 of 21, had a QBR of 6.2 because he also fumbled 3 times and lost one of them. The Vikings were, I guess, a bit lucky to overcome that big deficit against the Bears on Monday night, but it may have been because it was the Bears. And I'm going to tell you right now, early in the season, a team I think you got to keep an eye on are the Falcons, because they have totally changed themselves defensively. And that guy Pierce, who, a lot of teams avoided from Tennessee, he looks like the real deal. Leonard Floyd's there. They've got this guy, Diablo, number 0, Bowman, 33. Caden Ellis is a great player. Atlanta's totally different on defense than they were last year. Now, it could be a lot about McCarthy and just a young player right now that they took advantage of on a short week. Not to mention he had a baby this week. But the Falcons are a team to watch. They had a good chance to beat Tampa last week, and we get them in week 4. That is 2 weeks away. Washington at Atlanta. That will not be an easy football game. The Falcons, I think, could be legit. Penix Jr., I love Penix Jr. I think he can be that. He didn't look it last night, necessarily, but they ran the ball so well, and Minnesota self-destructed. McCarthy just self-destructed in the game. So there you go. We get 2 more tonight. No smell test picks tonight. Didn't give out either side. Don't love either side, although it will not surprise me at all if Houston plays very well at home tonight against Tampa Bay. We'll see. Houston lost that opener. I mean, it's just, recent impressions are the worst things to go on in the NFL. Total week-to-week league. All right, when we come back, you'll hear what Jay Gruden told me on Friday about his initial reaction after watching Thursday night, especially Green Bay's defense against Washington's offense. Then I'll hit some, upon further review of the game, I went back and watched a lot of the All-22, just a couple of observations that I made. And then Ben will join us at 12, and we will certainly continue to keep our eyes open on the Jaden Daniels injury. Worst case today, we're going to get some information from Dan Quinn at 3:30. I would assume, I don't, want to assume, what they say about assuming, Max, but I would assume that Chris is going to carry Dan Quinn's press conference live on his show at 3:30. Can I tease that? Can I promote that?
I think it's safe to say I'll have a conversation with him before he starts his show, and I'm pretty sure it was already
It'll be
in
a
his plans.
highly anticipated Dan Quinn press event if there's no news on Jaden. And even if there is news on Jaden at that point, it'll still be interesting. Look, they've done a good job of keeping everything under wraps. If there is something to be kept under wraps, I think we'll find out at 3:30 at the latest, maybe before. So keep it locked here. Do want to mention to you that Window Nation's got one of their most popular deals of the year right now available for you. If you've been thinking about new windows, September's a great time to buy new windows. You get them in well in advance of winter. And right now they're offering you buy 2, get 2 free. So you purchase 2 windows, your next 2 are free of charge. And if you choose, they give you the option to finance it and not pay anything for 2 full years. So no down payment, no payments, and no interest charged for 2 years. So you don't make a payment until the year 2027, all the while benefiting from new, much better insulated windows that will keep your home warmer during the winter, cooler during the summer. I trust Window Nation. You can as well. A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, 96% customer satisfaction rating, over 45,000 5-star reviews. They've installed 2 million windows across the country. They back it up with a lifetime warranty, and they were recently ranked highest on Forbes' list of best window installation companies. You can trust Window Nation, I promise you, for high quality, high customer service, and affordable windows. This sale ends September 30th. Don't miss out. This is Window Nation's most popular offer of the year. Buy 2, get 2 free. Don't pay anything for 2 years. Schedule your fast, free in-home estimate now with the pros at Window Nation, 866-90-NATION or windownation.com. Friday, actually Saturday on my podcast, I had Jay Gruden on, late Friday. And it was, where we have a chance to recap the game almost instantaneously. So I asked our former coach, the former coach of the Washington Redskins, just to kind of sum up Thursday night's loss in Green Bay to get started.
Yeah, it wasn't good. Anytime you look at the stat sheet, you see Jaden with 40-plus pass attempts and only about 7 rushing attempts for the team. It's not going to be good.
You know what? That's a great place to start. Tell me what you thought of Cliff Kingsbury's, game, the game that he called.
Well, it's easy to say it wasn't very good now. They were 3 for 16 on third down. There's 1 for 3 on fourth down. The critical situations, the critical plays, they did not make. They didn't really give Jade a chance to really succeed. And it was a tough game. The protection wasn't very good. The run game was awful, and it's tough to get a rhythm going as a play caller when you can't really run the ball. It takes away your play actions and your shot plays, and then you become one-dimensional. It's tough for any coordinator, and it just was that type of night.
The score was the game felt out of control, but the score was never out of control until the very end. And you hit on it, and I talked about this. The running backs in the game had 12 carries. There were 48 called pass plays in the game. Do you think that he should have given the run game more of an opportunity?
Yeah, you have to, especially on the road. You control the clock a little bit, but I don't know if he had confidence in moving that front for Green Bay. I think maybe he tried a couple early and saw there was no movement, so he put the ball in Jaden's hands, which you can't argue that point. But yeah, you just have to take the pressure off Jaden. He can't drop back and throw because the protection is not good enough. The offensive line is not good enough to protect against any team, let alone the Packers and Micah and all those guys. So yeah, you have to offset it with some run plays, and even if the quarterback design runs, anything to just try to get the chains moving another way.
Yeah, the game last night was really kind of a first, maybe the Philly game on the road last year on Thursday night, where, the protection wasn't good, the running game wasn't there, but Jaden typically has put on a cape and become Superman and he's made plays. He didn't make any last night, really. Why was that?
I don't know. I don't know. I think Green Bay did a really good job with their rush integrity, and they did a great job in the secondary. They really clamped down the receivers. Not a lot of separation for the receiving core. That was a little disappointing. So I don't know. I got to go back and watch the film and look at the pass game concept and see what happened there. But it just, to me, looking at it from on TV on this Amazon crap, it just didn't look like he had anywhere to go, running lanes or guys that were creating separation in the passing game. So they just bottled up the offense. And it's a short week. It's tough. It's on the road. It's never easy to come up with a great game plan on a Thursday night on the road, especially against a really good defense. So let's just chalk that up to early in the season. Thursday night games are never really good.
They played mostly zone, it appeared, in watching it on TV, Green Bay did. Doesn't that more often than not at least lead to, hey, we can get the ball out of his hands quickly on something super short?
Yeah, a lot of times you can, hit a flat route or a stick route, some stick flat, quick combinations to try to get, sometimes if you can't run the ball, there's some elements to a quick game that you can get, 5 or 6 yards on first down, which opens up play action and other things you can do. So they just really couldn't get anything going. It was really odd to see the lack of production on offense and separation from the receivers. And, you think you get Terry McLaurin something on a slant or a quick out or something like that, but nothing was there for him. Nothing was really happening.
Yeah, that's what it looked like. It looked like he didn't have anywhere to go with it. And then when he was looking to try to make a play, there wasn't anywhere to go either. I guess you just chalk it up, like you said, short turnaround, but an excellent defensive football team that they faced last night.
Yeah, for sure. You just got to be concerned moving forward about this offensive line play. I don't really see a lot of movement, a lot of physicality with them. They've shuffled so many parts. Tunsil coming in at left tackle and then moving Coleman to left guard. The right tackle, left tackle in college. I don't know. It's going to take some time for this offensive line to gel. I don't know what they're going to do about it. They're just not very good right now playing together.
Connerly Jr. really struggled. Would you consider moving Wiley to right tackle, which is where he's played, and get a veteran in there?
I thought Wiley did a pretty good job last year, really. I don't know why the sudden change, but I know Connolly's got probably more talent, physical talent than Wiley. But Wiley's, I think he's better outside than he is inside. He's not a very physical guy to play guard for me, but I would look to do that because he's struggled against the Giants too. Now, it wasn't like he had a perfect game against the Giants, and he's played two really good defenses. I get it, but there's other defensive ends that can rush. I just don't know if he's ready for right tackle yet. I think it's going to be some time.
On a night like last night, when you've been the play caller and you had a plan, and let's just say it was kind of a limited plan because of the turnaround, but when you have a plan and nothing's working, how much do you change in the midst of the game, adjust, as fans say? How about the adjustments? Where are the adjustments? Like, how hard is it? How easy is it? What's the process of saying nothing we're doing is working? We got to change everything.
It's hard. The biggest thing you got to try to figure out a way to try to get some chunk plays somehow, some way. And that's the biggest issue you have because obviously without the running game and the pass protection is not very good, you got to figure out a way to get Jaden outside the pocket, try to get some deep 3-level throws, something like that. When we beat Seattle, we had no running game and couldn't throw the ball, couldn't protect. We hit a chunk play to Josh Doxson or Brian Quick or something like that. Try to
quick
go on, but it's very, very difficult. That's the most important thing you try to do. So chunk plays take a long time. We can't protect. So how can we do it? You got to try to get some max protection, get them outside the pocket. And I think moving forward, I'd like to see them try to get Jaden outside the pocket on some bootlegs and things of that nature so he can see and then use his legs as athleticism, not so much being in the pocket on every drop back. That's tough on any quarterback.
We haven't had much to, constructively critique when it's come to Jaden Daniels over his first now 22 games, if you include the playoff games. But last year, I remember mentioning this to you, and then his quarterback coach, the guy that works with him out in California, came on and said that in some of the zone reads, he's not making consistently good decisions. There was one in the Giant game where he kept it where it looked like the end was playing him. Last night, the end crashed, and he should have pulled it, it looked like. Have you noticed that again this year?
Yeah, a couple times. Those things are hard, man. You got to get the snap. You got to ride the back of the belly, and your eyes are out there at that defensive end, and they get tricky. And he's got such great athleticism. Sometimes when he keeps it, he thinks he can outrun a guy, even if he's playing the zone read, even if he's playing the quarterback, he can outrun him, and he usually does. But yeah, that's an issue sometimes. That's such a bang type play, man. That's not easy.
There's Jay Gruden with me on my podcast that aired over the weekend. We actually recorded it late Friday. And I think, and I'm going to talk about this when we come back, I think after watching this game, all 22 style, I think a lot of what we talked about on Friday morning was definitely true. And I think some of it may have been exaggerated. I'll share which parts were exaggerated when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
All right, here is what's happening. Happy Monday. We take a look around the NFC East with Washington on a mini bye after taking on the Packers on Thursday Night Football. The Giants and Cowboys looked like it was straight out of action last night after an offensive explosion in the second half. A 37-37 overtime thriller ends with Brandon Aubrey coming in clutch for the Cowboys as time expired in overtime. The Eagles, they handled the Chiefs 20-17 in Fox's Game of the Week. Jalen Hurts with a less than ideal performance, passing for only 101 yards and completing one pass beyond 6 yards from scrimmage. Saquon Barkley with a quiet 94 yards and one touchdown. Again, the Eagles win 20-17. To baseball, the Nats, they beat the Pittsburgh Pirates by a score of 4-3. Cade Cavalli giving up 3 runs right out of the gate, was able to stop the bleeding. The Nats, they get 3 back in the second and are able to come in clutch when it mattered in the 8th inning with the Dalen Lyle double, driving in James Wood. The boys in red and white will shift their focus to the Atlanta Braves tonight. Mitch Parker on the bump for the Nats versus Spencer Strider. First pitch at 6:45. Nats on deck with Charlie and Dave at 6:15. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, Type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1, and you can catch Denton's office throughout all football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
From Landis. Landis writes, while Washington did not have a good showing against Green Bay, I think the fan base needs to relax a bit. Even if we end up not having the season we're all hoping for, the team's trajectory is still pointing upward. We no longer have the Griswolds running the franchise anymore, and we now have grown-ups in the building from top to bottom that are continuing to establish a structure and a culture conducive to long-term sustained success. again, the season may not turn out to be a disappointment. The season may turn out to be a disappointment, but I believe that we'll be okay moving forward because we have actual people who aren't going to compromise or overpromise results on the field and oversell hope to the fan base, but are going to work hard behind the scenes to put together an on-the-field product that'll deliver a championship one day. Thank you, Landis. That's a very mature and common sense approach. Yeah, there was a lot of you, man, really hitting the panic button after Thursday night. There are a couple of these that I can read. Where are they? This from Sam. Kevin, still think Jaden's an elite quarterback? Ha ha ha. I do, Sam. I do think he's still an elite quarterback after one bad game. This from Carl J. Kevin, you sure Jaden's top 5? He looked like a scared bottom 5 quarterback last night. I think the league figured some things out in the offseason. This from Maine 12. Funny to hear you saying Daniels takes no blame for the ass whooping on Thursday night. I agree with you, but Wilson had the same game against us, and you called him a backup quarterback with a pressure rate, and they couldn't run the ball either, yet he had a slightly better QBR than JD. This looks a little bit different after yesterday, Maine 12. Look, I mean, people, stop. Come on. First of all, I actually did have Jaden Daniels on my list of things that I didn't like in my game recap. I didn't think he played great. I thought he was a C. I think that's probably the lowest grade I've ever given him in a game. But, comparing him to the Russell Wilson game from a week ago is apples to oranges. It's not the same thing. Russell Wilson's 37 years old and near the end of his career. And his QBR may have been slightly better last week against Washington than Jaden's was against Green Bay because he was playing Washington's defense and Washington was playing Green Bay's defense. It's one game, people. Come on, man. He's 23, 24. I mean, 19 of the 20 games that we have evaluated, all of us, this isn't just one evaluation, 19 to 20 of the 22 have been A's, A pluses. I mean, come on. Seriously. Thank you, Landis, for that. This from Damon's. By the way, I would also mention the first 2 games of the year played against, I think, 2 teams where the defenses will hold up with really good pass rushers in Parsons and Abdul Carter, and then a really good sort of other players in those defensive fronts. This from Damon Smith. It's subject titled Replacing Eckler. And since the show on Friday, Wise done for the year, Eckler done for the year. Kevin, wanted to know your opinion on Adam Peters possibly trading for Antonio Gibson. He's currently not being utilized by the Patriots and is a good third down back you could possibly get for a day 3 pick. Well, he is being utilized by the Patriots, actually, Damon. And I know you wrote this before yesterday's games. He had a 90-yard kickoff return for a touchdown in the game. He also had 5 carries for 27 yards. He also had and was targeted, I think, once on passes, had 1 catch. So they are using him. Now, Travion Henderson and Ramondre Stevenson are the first 2 backs. I doubt you can get Antonio Gibson, not after that kickoff return. They're not dealing him. No chance. All right, so I didn't, I didn't put myself through a torture chamber in spending a lot of time going back and looking at the game in detail. But there were a couple of things that I wanted to mention that I thought maybe, on first blush, late Thursday night, early Friday morning, maybe we exaggerated a bit. First of all, what was still clear after going back and watching the All-22, God, man, Green Bay was good that night. They were so good defensively. They were bigger, stronger, faster, especially their defense. It was a bit of a mismatch. And the way I described it here on the show Friday morning, nothing changed. In fact, I almost feel more strongly that Washington got bullied in the game. They got bullied. This would be, as my good friend Richard Doc Walker would say, this game was a manhood issue game. And the Packers really just dominated the game. They were both sides of the ball, but defensively with Parsons, with Gary, with Van Ness, with Cooper, with Walker, with Wyatt. I mean, their defense looks like the real deal. Who knows? And I still think, for me, specific to the game the other night, the thing that upset me the most after just not really responding and getting bullied around is I still think they should have run the football. I know Bates wasn't there. I get it. But 12 running back carries and 48 called pass plays when the game was never really, until the very end, out of control. I would have loved to have seen them answer the bullying with kind of trying to go back at them with Bill, with Krosky Merritt in particular. I will say this, my one long-term or medium-term concern, Jaden's number one, obviously, now, and we'll find out more about that this afternoon. Injuries, including whatever Jaden has, Eckler, Wise. But the offensive line now is, I think, in terms of a medium or a longer-term concern, is number one on the list. I think that they are going to, the good defensive teams, they're going to have some issues protecting. And I think Connerly Jr., I think they got to think about Wiley against the Raiders and Max Crosby and company. I mean, it's not unusual for a rookie in his first two games to be a bit overwhelmed. And Connerly Jr. is overwhelmed right now. This is not a developmental year, 2025. It's supposed to be a win and win big now season. Get the veteran in there on Sunday against the Raiders. All right, a couple things about Jaden. So we know a few more things about his performance than we knew on Friday. The pressure rate of 46% was a high of his career. Not even close on dropbacks. It came out to 26 total pressures, 19 hurries, 4 sacks, the 230 total yards for Washington, the fewest of any game he's quarterbacked in the NFL so far. And it was not a good night for the offensive line, particularly Connerly Jr., who allowed 9 pressures in the game. That was the worst. Allegretti was second. Here's the one reason I'd consider Wiley. Allegretti and Connerly playing side by side on the right side, I think is a problem. I think they've got to steady the ship on that side. Cosme will be back. That'll be huge, okay? But for now, I'd certainly seriously consider Wiley. They know a lot more than we do. So a couple of things that are a little bit different than the way I thought they were on first blush. Green Bay played primarily zone, but they played some man coverage too. Jaden had a couple of times man coverage opportunities. Now, when he had them, he didn't have a lot of time. As I mentioned, 46% pressure rate is proof of that. But I said the other night that they didn't confuse him as much as he was contained. I still think that's the truth. They did a great job of not letting him run, and maybe it's because he was banged up. Who knows? But they use that, speed, size. And by the way, when he did break contain, their speed caught him. I don't think he was confused. I do think he was a bit skittish in watching it. The reason I say that is he was too quick to hit the check down on a couple of those plays. You didn't see him necessarily, when you're watching the game. Here are a couple of the examples. Where are they? He had in the first half, 2nd and 10, their own 45, third drive offensively in the game. It was his worst miss. He hit a check down to Debo way too quickly. Terry ran a great comeback route near sideline and was open for a big 15 plus yard gain. We've seen it a number of times. He obviously can make that throw. Terry runs a good route. He didn't get separation much of the night, but he got separation on that play. I don't know why he didn't throw it. It was a clean pocket. It was one of those instances where he actually had time. He was just too quick to the check down on a lot of plays. There was a 2nd and 6 in the third quarter at the Green Bay 27. This was versus zone. He's got to throw it to Terry, who finds the hole in the zone. And again, he checks it down to Debo. Now, one of the things I would consider in these instances where he hit the check down quickly, not that he felt the rush necessarily. I mean, it's part of it. But I think the game plan was, let's get it out in a hurry. Let's get it to Debo. Let's get it to Terry. Let's get it to Noah Brown. Let's get it to Eckler. Let's get it to Zach. And let's see if they can break a few tackles and make some yards after the catch. They're going to play us in zone. They're not going to allow us to get behind them. They're too good up front. They don't need to add extra man pressure, a lot of it. They can stop the run without loading the box. We need yards after catch. And maybe that was the plan. And maybe Jaden said, I'll get to the check down much sooner than I typically do. But there were some opportunities, and I thought he got to the check down too quickly. What else? Sunday, we did this segment about what out of the Giants game would be the thing that would be, that would stand up over the next 17. My number one was they tackled so well. I can't see tackling being just a 1 week aberration. If you tackle well in week one, you typically become a good tackling team. Well, guess what? In game 2, they were not a good tackling team at all, especially the secondary. It was a bad game overall for the DBs. I can't imagine that anybody looked good to them on film. Maybe Trey Amos. Trey Amos, maybe you can spare him from everybody else, but it was a bad tackling game too, that's for sure. What else are in my notes? I think Dorrance Armstrong's really underrated from our standpoint. I liked him at the end of last year, and I thought that he had a chance to have a good season. His versatility is big time for this team, especially now with Wise out. I thought Dorrance Armstrong was pretty damn good in the game. And I was disappointed with Daron Payne. I didn't mention that specifically in my aftermath recap. Man, I mean, he had a rush on one play, maybe two, but he was not a factor in the game at all. Daron, you got to be a factor in a game like that. Yeah, that was kind of it. I think that, number one, there was more man-to-man than I thought, still primarily zone coverage, and that he was under siege for the majority of the night, hence the 46% pressure rate. But there were a couple of times where they blocked it up and he went too quickly to the check down. So I gave him a C on Friday. I'm not changing the grade. It's the worst grade I think I've ever given him. He did not have a great game. Now, again, still, in my opinion, down the list in terms of, why did they lose the game? They lost the game primarily because they got bullied in the trenches, both sides of the ball. They just got manhandled in the trenches, and they were outcoached. And I say that because, come on, man, Tucker Kraft is still open. Their receivers had yards of separation. I mean, quarter of a field of separation in some cases. So you'd have to credit some scheme with Matt LaFleur and company against Joe Witt Jr. All right. Ben Standig next after these words from a few of our sponsors. Ben Standing is still standing after Thursday night's beatdown in Green Bay. 1-1, people. They've got 15 left. They're going to play them. I promise you that. Ben is with us every Monday and Friday. Follow him on X at Ben Standing. Subscribe to his Substack. It's called Last Man Standing. And listen to his podcast. That's also called Last Man Standing. So let's start with Jaden and his health. Do you have any update other than are we still stuck on Grant's information from Friday? And if that's the case, what does your reporter instincts tell you about the lack of information?
Yeah, so I wrote about this for the Substack because sometimes when you don't have information or there's no noise, that says something in and of itself, right? The fact that we know that they had the 5 guys who were ruled who were hurt in the game and ruled out or what have you, and those guys were going to get imagery. We already knew about Eckler and Wise. Unfortunately, they're out for the year. I haven't heard anything about Daniels, even though we saw him, slight limping at the end of the game. I saw him; he was literally walking in front of me into the interview room, so I saw it, as close as you can possibly be. It doesn't mean it's anything serious, but okay. So it would be reasonable to think that they might, do testing just because, he's pretty valuable. Then until Grant says what Grant says, kind of hedged a little bit, but I understand. And then I started digging in, and I'm sure so did everybody else, national, local, what have you. And, there's nothing, nobody's talking. Nobody's talking. What does that mean? Well, there's no pushback for one, because obviously once the Grant thing got out there, it's getting aggregated. So if there was reason to be like, what are you talking about? This is garbage. He's fine. You would think somebody would have said something to somebody, local, Schefter, what have you. That hasn't happened, nor has anybody put out any information. So my sense is that there is something to this, that he did have an exam, which is not the same as saying he's hurt. That there's any ramifications, and he may very well be out there on Sunday against the Raiders, but that there's something to this, or I imagine we would have heard pushback by now.
Yeah, the question is, and I agree with you, there's something to this, and I have a feeling that we'll end up finding that he was examined with either, an MRI or X-rays or image, whatever, that there was some concern. But if that was the case and there was nothing to it, I still think we would have heard something by now.
Yeah. No, obviously, for us normal people, an MRI results can take several days, right?
Right. Not for professional athletes.
Right. They're going to get something within 24 hours, give or take, right? Now, could there be additional testing that they had to wait for? Or, it was Friday. I mean, not that, the NFL can't get people to work on the weekends, but you know what I mean? I don't know exactly what. I mean, I have no idea what else would be. But if they wanted some more testing, or hey, we did the test today, but we want to do another one on Monday, should there be any swelling or, whatever, maybe there's something else that needs to still happen. So there really isn't anything definitive to say. Sure, I guess that's possible. But yeah, you would think that logically, one way or the other, we'd hear something if they, look, Eckler and Wise, we know that, right? Those things may be more obvious, and they're also, the end result is the end result. They're out. So yeah, there's no real point in hiding that. Plus, we all saw that in real time. So yeah, you would think that we would have heard something. Now, I would also go back to last year when Jaden hurt his rib. They were very tight on that information over those next couple of weeks about what he was going through and everything. So, we've already seen that with him specifically. There have not been as forthcoming as maybe with some other issues. Now, all that said, Dan Quinn talks today. I would presume he's going to give us some type of an update. He doesn't have to technically, since Wednesday is when the injury report comes out. But do
you think that's in play? Do you think there's a chance we don't learn anything from Quinn? They have been. You and I have talked about this on and off the air. This is not the last regime where they'd fight each other to get information out. This is, buttoned up, and we learned that last year with the rib, injury during those few weeks. Is it possible they take this to Wednesday?
Yeah, I think it's possible. Sure. Again, they don't have to tell the world anything until Wednesday when they put out an injury report, and he's either on it or he's not. I mean, the other day they put him on the injury report for a right wrist injury or issue that none of us knew about, and they said he was full, but just, hey, for full disclosure, we're just letting you know that, something was going on here. Okay, cool. Would they do that? I mean, would they therefore do that again? Here to say, hey, look, we're going to tell you something, maybe, but that was an injury report that they had to put out. That today is not that day. So yeah, it's possible it goes till Wednesday.
Do you think the tackle on Jaden in the Green Bay game was a hip drop?
I've seen people say that. I don't know that I'm a hip drop tackle expert. I understand, but looking at it and people saying that, I guess maybe I can. There was no. We'll see if the league comes out and finds anybody, finds the tackler. So maybe, but if it is, then that's potentially the cause for alarm. I mean, just the result of how that happens. I mean, it doesn't have to be that type of tackle. It could be any issue, and you could obviously get an injury. But maybe, I don't know. What did you think?
Well, I don't know that it's the most obvious hip drop tackle of all time. And I also think 55 on the play actually does to attempt to make sure that Jaden isn't pinned and he lifts him up over himself, perhaps actually with an effort so that he did not injure Jaden. I don't know. These things last year, it was a rule last year. I think it got legislated primarily with fines over in-game penalties. Should be interesting to see if that one gets called that way. I guess we'll find out, tomorrow or Wednesday when they release all the fines. So, so we've talked about what we'll hear from Quinn. I mean, obviously he'll be pressed on this, but you'll realize very quickly if the answers are going to be, guys, I don't have anything for you on this. That'll happen right at the beginning. And if there is information on this, it'll be interesting because I would imagine that if there is something to it, the next issue is, the big issue is he going to miss any time? And then it's, if no, that's not the concern. It's, well, what about in the immediacy, practice and the Raiders, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Washington had obviously a little more rest than it did last week. So that's helpful, hopefully, if for any of these guys that are banged up. But yeah, that's the question is going to be, is he going to be able to go and play the Raiders? Look, if this is all for nothing, if this is all, we're all just, wasting time. Okay, cool. But like when you don't put any information out, then this is what happens on any topic. If you keep all the information within, then the rest of the world's going to speculate. So I don't, that's why it's hard to discuss this completely because it's like this could literally be nothing or it could be something. I think there's I think they at least tested him. Beyond that, though, sure. I mean, if there's any question that he's in doubt for the Raiders or there's a possibility he doesn't play, that's a huge deal. If he's out there Wednesday and no harm, no foul, then I guess it wasn't a big deal.
All right, let's go to the injuries we do know. Eckler's done. What does that mean for the running back room, the running back, active versus inactive, carries versus no carries? How do you think that they address no Eckler moving forward?
Can you imagine a month ago if I told you that going into week 3, they wouldn't have Brian Robinson or Austin Eckler?
Yeah, right.
Look, I mean, the options currently are in no particular order, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, Jeremy McNichols, Chris Rodriguez, and you have Donovan Edwards on the practice squad. That is, on paper, not an appealing situation. You've basically got, McNichols is a proven vet who can help you out a little bit in certain ways, but not a guy you're relying on for your offense. It's more of the subtle things, blocking, and, he can do a lot of stuff, just not with a particularly high ceiling. Rodriguez, we have no idea for real. I mean, every time he has played, it looks like he's delivered, tough runner, all that, but this is two regimes that have never quite bought into it to the degree of saying, hey, you're going to be one of our guys. Although I imagine he factored into the Robbins trade to some degree. I'm not going to worry about Donovan Edwards. So that brings us to Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. Obviously, we have discussed Bill over and over again about, the upside, the burst. He gives them that explosiveness that they didn't have out of the backfield last year. we saw it for sure in week 1 and even last week, or even Thursday. He was like the one rare piece on offense that was actually still productive. He just only had the 4 carries. I think the question has got to be, how much do they trust him to do all the stuff besides the running of the football? When Green Bay is sending in tons of guys and, the blitzing and all that, and you've got to make sure, and then you lose John Bates, your best sort of non-offensive lineman blocker. You've got to be sure you feel comfortable with whoever the running back is picking up the blitz or chipping or what have you, which is why I think McNichols ended up playing more than he, did in week 1 and Bill less. But what do they do now? In terms of just the running of the football, Bill has to be out there. I don't see what else they could do unless, there's a Chris Rodriguez angle. But so Bill has to play. The question is, how do you do it in such a way that if there is a question of trust in all the other aspects, that you don't make it a problem? So I think Bill would probably be the early down back, would be my guess. When it comes to third down, already obvious passing down, McNichols comes in. And then, short yardage goal line, we'll see if it is Rodriguez or not. I would guess so. So, in terms of the totals, I think it's just going to depend on, time and place of the game. How is the other team's pass rush doing against the offensive line? Things like that. I mean, Max Crosby is in this game coming up for the Raiders. Obviously, he's one of the premier pass rushers, so there'll be extra attention on him. And so I think a lot of that's going to have to do with, again, how much do they trust Bill across the board? Is John Bates playing? And, can their offensive line hold up against in this case, the Raiders' defensive line?
There's some news. I don't know if you saw this. According to Schefter, Washington is adding veteran running back Chase Edmonds to their practice squad. Edmonds had a career in Arizona. I remember his years in Arizona. I'm pulling up where he's been recently.
He didn't play last year. I looked this up the other day. He had an injury. He had some sort of injury. He didn't play, as I said, last year for any team, I don't believe. But he did. He was in Arizona with Cliff Kingsbury. Again, we don't mention it as much here as we did with the Carolina Panthers group, but constantly the guys they bring in have some connection to somebody. It's just not one specific team. It's at least broad range. But yes, Kingsbury's going to know Edmonds, and Edmonds had some productive years. But he hasn't. Similar to like the Michael Gallup situation. Like, where is he physically now?
Right. I'll tell you what, J.K. Dobbins and Nick Chubb are off to decent starts in the league after waiting to sign late. What you just said, I remember the whole Rivera thing. I said, and I remember saying, guys, pay attention to the league. I mean, when guys get jobs, they tend to hire people they know more than people they don't know. It happens everywhere. What about the loss of Wise? What does that mean?
Well, I think it puts a crimp in their plan of being bigger, because you still have obviously the tackles, and Dorrance Armstrong's on the other side, but they don't have another guy like Jalen Holmes from a dimensions angle is similar. Big guy, 280, but he's on the practice squad. They didn't view him, despite him playing last year and being around this summer, they didn't view him as a guy to put on their roster. So, okay, you can bring him up. But is that a guy you're now going to say go start first and second downs? I don't think so. But I also don't know who they would do in general. I mean, maybe it's more like a Jacob Martin, Von Miller staying in sort of that sub package role. But Jacob Martin is more of a edge rusher type build. So even if you say, okay, we're going to go that direction, that changes the calculus of we think getting bigger helps us out in the run and so on. So I think other than you can move a tackle outside and play 3 tackles for a moment or two, but that's a couple plays here and there. That's not a plan. So to a degree, I think they have to abandon that idea of, well, we're going to get bigger and that's going to work. Unless you're going to tell me that Jalen Holmes is all of a sudden goes from being on the practice squad to a guy you think you can start. I think look, Javonte Jean-Baptiste is the other guy. He's the one who replaced Wise. We'll see. He was a 7th round pick last year who, played sparingly and missed most of this summer with an injury. What's he going to look like? Who can say? I think there's intrigue with him, but to come in and have to play meaningful snaps off the bat, I don't know if that's the move. So I do think this is, there are best players and then there are indispensable players, and the indispensable players don't always have to be the best players. And I think all the 4 guys who were hurt or were ruled out in this game, They are all indispensable because there's no obvious backup to say, okay, now you go do that thing. It's not like that.
Do you think there's a chance Connerly Jr. could get benched for Wiley?
I think it's possible. I mean, I think Allegretti could also maybe get benched for Wiley. They're going to have to decide, or the coaching staff, when they look back at the tape, what were the issues? What was it more of Connerly specifically? Was it the combination of the two of them? What do they have to do there? We talked about this over the summer. I'm no offensive line expert, but to me, I thought Andrew Wiley had just a better summer, but not like they're sitting Russ Grimm or anything, but just I thought he seemed to me to be a little better than Allegretti, but obviously they decided to stay with a guy who'd been in the starting lineup as a guard last year. Okay. But that's the question. So, I think it's conceivable Wiley starts at one of those spots for sure. Obviously there's always the, hey, we don't want to mess with the confidence of the kid, and perhaps going to that rotation they did last year on the other side is something to consider. But, I think you'd have to at least consider some kind of substitution.
What do you make of just Quinn coached teams, whether it's as a coordinator or a head coach, having a difficult time with Shanahan tree coaches?
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Somebody was mentioning that to me the other day that, there's something to that here, LaFleur being an obvious one. I don't know. I obviously would love to hear. It's always fascinating to me, these coaches get into the, I do things a certain way, and they just really seem to struggle sometimes to get out of it. That was, something Cliff Kingsbury talked about a lot last year when he took sort of a year off to clear his head and figure out where is he going to go here going forward. There was all that cliff talk and things like that. But that's about, okay, I have to self-scout a little bit. I know we know that Dan Quinn did do that after he got fired in Atlanta. He made a big production about it. He had, somebody come in and help and really identify how he is as a coach and all these things. But when it comes to the systems, it's like when Marshawn Lattimore said the other day after the game that it wasn't that complicated why Green Bay was finding success. We are a press cover defense. The way to beat a press cover defense is send guys in motion. Therefore, you can't get your hands on them. And then what do you do to adjust? So, if one system is quote unquote beating another, well, then what's the adjustment? So, again, far smarter. Quinn and his staff are far smarter than me when it comes to these things. So I don't exactly know why, but it's always weird when you see those types of scenarios. It just, to me, leads to the idea of some kind of stubbornness or some inability to adjust if over and over again that you seem to struggle against a particular system.
What were your big takeaways being able to sit back and watch football all weekend, especially yesterday?
God, that was fun yesterday. The 1 o'clock window was great. I think it would be impossible to not come out of the Thursday game with concerns. Now, concerns is not the same as panic, but a lot, the injuries obviously, but then just the way that we're getting manhandled basically by Green Bay, particularly with the Green Bay's defense. But then you go out and see Detroit put up a 50 spot on the Bears, and if Washington and Detroit are basically the mirror images of each other, each one played Green Bay, each one looked bad. There were questions about what's going on for Detroit. It was, can they score without Ben Johnson? Well, obviously yes, especially if they're playing Ben Johnson. So if it was reverse and Washington had played Green Bay first, we'd be like, oh boy. But then they go out and beat the Giants, somewhat convincingly. Then, okay, everybody's feeling better today. The fact that the Giants went out yesterday and looked really good, even though they lost in overtime to Dallas. I mean, Russell Wilson, for all the talk of he's, walking dead, he looked really good yesterday. So I think to a degree you can feel better about it, but I think that perspective is important. If the schedule is reversed, I know this doesn't matter, and it does, who knows what would happen if we reversed it. But, nobody's looking at Detroit today going, oh, they got problems. So it's concern, but not panic based. And after watching the games, that's kind of how I was looking at it.
Thank you. As always, Ben Standig. Appreciate it. 3:30 today, we will carry Quinn's Zoom call with people like Ben to find out what the deal is with Jaden Daniels. Hopefully, it would really be fascinating if he just stonewalls everybody. Because that's what they've been doing all weekend. with the number of people that have probably reached out to try to find out what the hell's going on, there's no information since Grant's, discussion / report on Friday that Jaden had an MRI or had imaging or, of his knee. That's pretty remarkable. I thought for sure somebody would have something over the weekend, didn't you?
Yeah, look, yes, I figured we would know something, but again, this guy in particular, we've already seen that they're going to be clearly extra cautious, and in this case, I'm sure, like I said, I imagine they were whatever one test showed, they want to maybe have another one, and if that's the case, then maybe that does bleed into today because it was a weekend. I don't know. NFL teams get things done. So maybe it isn't anything more than just, hey, we want to be as cautious as possible. But yeah, it's odd that nothing has come out yet.
All right, talk to you later. Thanks for doing this. Enjoy today. We'll be listening for sure.
Thanks, man.
Ben Standig, everybody. Don't forget Dan Quinn's Zoom media availability is at 3:30. And you'll be able to hear it here on the Team 980. We'll find out, I would assume, something about Jaden Daniels' health at that point. All right, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Opening up the phones. We're a few days now, out from Thursday night's beatdown. We have a whole Sunday's worth of games to kind of learn a little bit more. What'd you learn from this past weekend? 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. What'd you learn from another weekend, week 2 of the NFL, week 3 of the college football season, if you want to weigh in? Phone lines are open, 301-230-0980. All right, what'd you learn from this football weekend? Week 3 college football, week 2 of the NFL, which is not complete. We've got 2 games tonight, 301-230-0980. Max and I have a couple of things that we think we have learned after a long football weekend, a good football weekend. I mean, the 1 o'clock window yesterday was great. The late window was really, really good. I mean, you had the Indy-Denver game and the Eagles and the Chiefs on Saturday. There certainly were a couple of exciting games, including Texas A&M Notre Dame. Here's what I've learned. I mentioned this last week for the first time, I think, with Denton. Maybe mentioned it with you early in the week. Carson Beck is going to win the Heisman Trophy. Miami is going to be a playoff team, and Carson Beck is not only going to be the Heisman Trophy winner this year, he's going to end up being the first quarterback selected in the NFL draft next spring. Now, I know, then those of you that follow college football, I know that there are a lot of issues with Carson Beck in terms of his personality. So that is for me, a TBD when I get more information. Talent-wise, dude, 6'4", he can make every throw, 220, really poised, sees it quickly, has a quick release, has some mobility. People got down on him at Georgia, and they moved on. They got Gunnar Stockton quarterbacking that team. But the thing I learned, Miami's really good, and Carson Beck is my week 3 pick. I picked him last week to win the Heisman Trophy and be a very high selection in next April's draft.
Another thing on Carson Beck, Kevin, he's currently the favorite now to win the Heisman
Is he?
at 8-1. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I know.
That doesn't seem that far out there. It was a little bit more out there last week. Is he really the favorite to win the Heisman now?
I see him right now, 8-1 is my favorite. John Mateer second at plus 900. Gunnar Stockton in third, 11-1. Jeremiah Smith, 12-1. Dante Moore, 13. Marcel Reed, 16-1.
God, Marcel Reed is terrible. I'm sorry. That guy can't play quarterback. I mean, he runs around. He's athletic, but God, he doesn't see it at all. Okay. Well, I mean, last week when I first said it, it seemed a little bit more out there.
Hey, never wrong. Just early, and you got the great
is
value.
Arch Manning even on the board anymore? He's not having a good start to the season.
I'm 35-1 at this point, and in the live odds, Haynes King sits at 45-1, 2 spots back.
What about Gunnar Stockton? Where'd you say Stockton was?
He's third, 11-1. So,
and Mateer, the Oklahoma quarterback, is second.
Yep, number 2 at 9-1. Might be worth a little sprinkle here and there.
All right.
One thing I learned from this weekend, and I've got the Florida shirt on right now, LSU's secondary is monstrous. DJ Lagway did not do himself any favors, but 5 interceptions is that's a lot of picks.
I mean,
a lot of picks.
3 of them were horrendous throws.
Yeah.
And decisions.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Nussmeier made a terrible decision in that game.
He didn't look great either. And that's been my thing with him the past couple years is he shows these really good flashes. Garrett Nussmeier does, but the consistency is what needs to be worked on. And so I think hopefully this year he can kind of work it out, but we'll see kind of where it goes in terms of drafting this year. What, you got anything else you learned?
Yeah, I got a couple of them. A couple more. And phone lines are open, 301-230-0980. What'd you learn from this past weekend? It can be Washington related after sort of upon further review of Thursday night's game. So I think that from look, we don't learn anything in week 1, but I do think that I learned that Green Bay's defense, if I wasn't sure Thursday night, given what Detroit did yesterday to the Bears, we know this from a personnel standpoint. They have outstanding personnel, the Packers do. Big-time personnel. I know some people that were at the game and that were borderline sort of on the field before the game. They said not only does Green Bay, are they imposing physically, they're just so big. All of their dudes are just big and thick. But, from Lucas Van Ness to Micah Parsons to Devontae Wyatt to Rashawn Gary. Gary is an absolute beast at 6'5", 290 or whatever he is. They're tall. They're long. How do they shut down Detroit completely? Completely shut them down. And then we see what Detroit did. Washington had a decent offensive day, not great, against the Giants. Completely shut Washington down. Green Bay's next opponent are the Browns. God, I feel sorry for Flacco if he plays in that game against the Browns on Sunday. At the same time, the Browns defense is really good. They got that rematch, or not the rematch. They got that game, the Parsons return home game in week 4 against Dallas on Sunday Night Football. But I think I learned that Green Bay's certainly legit. This isn't much of a reach on defense in particular. What else you got?
Bryce Young, I think it's time. I think it's over. It's just the consistency ain't there. The flashes that he showed last year that were honestly they were pretty average flashes. I just don't think that Bryce Young's got it. I don't think he's the guy for this Carolina Panthers team who's going to get it done or take them kind of anywhere they want to go. So I think it might be time to consider other options than Bryce Young at this point.
Yeah, that game, I had a bunch of different, things going. You get the 3 games in the afternoon, only 3. Indy, Denver was great. Obviously, Philly and KC. And the Carolina, Arizona game got sideways, and then all of a sudden it didn't. They scored, 13 unanswered from 27-9 down to 27-22, and they recovered an onside kick. And they actually had the ball down late.
Cardinals tried to give away that game so many times.
Bryce Young's problem more than anything else is just how small he is.
Yeah.
He's just small.
It's the Kyler thing with him.
It is the Kyler thing. Yesterday you saw that matchup's probably the 2 shortest quarterback matchup you can have.
Yeah.
Kyler Murray's probably 5'8", 5'9", and Bryce Young's probably 5'9", 5'10" tops, right? Something like that.
Listen,
I don't know.
Given how the photos look, I think you're right. According to NFL reporting, it might be a little different.
Well, the program height and weight are different.
Right.
But Bryce Young doesn't look like neither quarterback looks like they're over 200 pounds either.
No, not even close.
Here are the listed heights and weights. Kyler Murray, 5'10", 207. I'd say that's like 5'9", 195. And then Bryce Young is 5'10", 204, more like, I don't know. Kyler Murray looks shorter to me than Bryce Young. They look both very slight. I remember Stanford Steve watching Bryce Young in one of the playoff games, maybe the national championship game a couple of years ago, and he just said, you can't really understand how small he is for a quarterback unless you're standing on the field looking at him. Mm-hmm. He had a good comeback last year after he got benched and then he came back. But yeah, we'll see. All right. 301-230-0980 if you want to weigh in. 301-230-0980. What'd you learn from this past weekend? Let's start with Anthony in DC. Anthony, go ahead.
Kevin, what had me depressed this weekend was it just proved how roster deficient we are on a macro level on both lines, and on a micro level, multiple teams having multiple game records. And the best we have is Frankie Louvu, who's been MIA the first 2 games.
Well, I don't think most teams have 2 game records. That's definitely not true.
Not most teams, but there are definitely teams that have 2 game records.
Yeah, no doubt. You know who's got 2 game records? I think the Giants, and they gave up 40.
The Giants have their NASCAR team again.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you, Anthony. I don't. I think that the talent on defense, I think Bobby Wagner's still a good player. I think Dorrance Armstrong's a good player and a versatile player, not a game wrecker. I think Frankie Louvu, from that standpoint, is probably the guy. I don't know that he's been MIA the first 2 games. He has not played at the level that he played at last year. He's missed some tackles for sure, or he did the other night. I don't know. Let's wait to see what Kinlaw ends up being this year, healthy in a new scheme. But you're right. You're right. There is not a, oh my God, we have to account for this guy from the other team leading up to a game against our team. That's true. And you have a lot of teams that have at least one of those players in the division. Philadelphia's got a couple, but Jalen Carter's probably one. The Giants have Carter and Lawrence. Dallas doesn't have anybody on defense anymore, not with Parsons gone. Yeah, that's fair. I think I agree with it. Brian from Waldorf. Brian, what'd you learn from this past weekend?
Hey, Kev, how you doing?
Good, Brian.
What I learned is I don't think we're making the NFC Championship game this year, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I also think that's what's in jeopardy is a playoff berth. And here's my thing: I'm only scared, and I know this is maybe not, but the injury thing. I think we're a couple of more injuries away from really, really being in jeopardy. I think the age of this roster is going to catch up. I'm not really mad about the age of the roster. I mean, because I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure. I think AP wanted to be aggressive, but I think the aggressive moves that he could have made just wasn't there in the opportunities. And I think the Laramie Tunsil probably gave up too much for that. And I just think down the road, we kind of like overshot a little bit. I think we overshot the ball a little bit, and I think we're set back maybe another year. I think the age of the roster is going to catch up to it later as we get down, and I'm scared of injuries. And I think we're in jeopardy of probably not making the playoffs this year. NFC Championship game really wouldn't bother me, though.
I can't get to there after 2 weeks, especially learning what we may be learning about their week 2 opponent. I can't get there. Now, look, if they're going to lose 2 significant contributors every week or just one every week, that devastates most teams in the NFL, especially a team like ours where there's not, consistent depth across the roster. Injuries are always the wild card. And so far through 2 weeks, there's more misfortune when it comes to injuries than there was last year. Losing Eckler, I know that, some of you think he's plodding. He's not a great runner. Eckler's a big loss. Wise is a big loss, and we'll see what the case is with Jaden. But I can't get there after 2 games, one of them being against the Packers. I still think Washington, we're going to, at some point during the season, look at the team and say, they're really close. They're really close. If they can just, fix this like last year, they can just stop the run, or if this year it's, if they can just get more pass rush pressure, or they can get the running game. I don't know what it'll be, but I'm nowhere near thinking that this team isn't capable of some of the things that we talked about before the season started. Kevin in Arlington. Kevin, go ahead.
Hey, Kev. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I think the thing that, upon the further review for me is, when you consider Crowder, Zaccheaus, and De'Ami Brown are no longer on the roster, and you look at our wideout targets, other than Terry, who scares you at stretching the field unless it's rookie Jalen Lane? And I hope it is. But I'm beginning to worry. I saw a lot of east-west throwing. And I don't know.
Saw a lot of checkdowns on Thursday night.
What's that?
Saw a lot of checkdowns, and the east-west was to get the ball out of his hands quickly, no doubt.
Okay. Are you concerned, though, about what I just raised, about our ability to stretch the field with the guys?
Look, Zaccheaus gave you some quicks. De'Ami gave you some speed. I don't think that even last year or even this year that there's a player offensively other than the quarterback that you truly have to game plan for. But yeah, I mean, I think Debo actually is the guy right now that has a chance. I mean, some of those runs after the catch the other night were spectacular. He still has it, man, if he's healthy. I think in many ways, other than the quarterback, there's a chance we'll get to the end of this year and Debo will emerge as the second best player on offense. But I really Debo, stretching the field, Terry's really the guy. You're right. And that's kind of it. And even in that case, it's not like teams are having to game plan for it in a significant way.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Kevin.
All right, Kev, thanks. Let's go to Aveen. Aveen, what'd you learn from this past weekend?
Hey, Kevin, I'm going to say that there's no real rising threats in the NFC other than the established teams, which are Green Bay, Philly, Detroit, Tampa, and the Rams, and then maybe you can put us in there. But I don't know. You look at the NFC East, like the Cowboys look sloppy. Their defense was bad last year. Now they don't have Parsons, and their defense looks really bad. The Giants, they're talented, but there really hasn't been any proof of concept with their defense. That was a bottom 5 defense last year, too. You go to the North and like the Vikings, maybe the Vikings could still be good, but McCarthy looks still really limited to me. Like the bad stuff on his draft report is showing up where he has this long windup. He struggles to throw outside the numbers. He had another pick outside the numbers last night. He missed the ball deep. He struggles to put touch on the ball. Caleb Williams, people said he played better yesterday, and he still looks uncomfortable staying in the pocket and, having to make reads. And then the Falcons look super talented. That's going to be a tough game for us. Bijan looks awesome, but there's something about the Falcons where they kind of feel like how the Chargers used to feel, like they bungle games. That game should not have been as close as it was yesterday, and they kept messing up in the red zone. They also kind of feel like a sloppy team. And Penix, he looks good sometimes, but he also misses a lot. Like he'll throw over people's heads on out routes, on
he
corner
did last
posts,
night.
things
You're
like
right.
that. Yep. And then just with the West, the non-Rams teams, like the Cardinals almost blew their game. The Seahawks, maybe the Seahawks are the team, but like that game was an ugly game before that.
I don't trust Darnold.
Bungling. Yep. And then, 49ers feel fragile. So I don't know how you feel, but I just don't feel like there are any threats in the NFC other than the established teams.
Yeah, but that established list that you gave of Philadelphia, the Packers, the Bucks, and the Rams, did I miss anybody?
Detroit, Philadelphia, Green Bay, Detroit. Bucks,
it's formidable. I mean, the NFC is deeper than the AFC. It really is, especially now with Burrow gone in Cincinnati. I mean, the AFC has truly right now, Buffalo, Baltimore is what you would say. I mean, I'm not giving up on Kansas City, and I think the Chiefs will be there. You just gave me 5 established NFC teams, all of whom I could see being a major threat in January to get to the Super Bowl. All of those. I mean, maybe a lesser chance on Tampa, but I think Minnesota's the team out of last year's double-digit win teams that's going to take the major step back. McCarthy's got a long way to go. Doesn't mean he won't get there. I wasn't a big fan, but that doesn't mean anything. All of us are so wrong on these guys all the time, and you got to give it time. And KOC is a great developer, but he looks to be a next year or year after guy. They should try to bring Kirk back. They really should. I don't know what if that's even in the cards. There's a lot of discussion of that over the summer. The 49ers I'm interested in, though. I'm definitely interested in them. If they can win these games without Purdy, some of them anyway, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Thanks, Savine. Let's go to Jumbo. Jumbo, go ahead.
The thing that I learned the weekend is I don't think the Eagles have played all that great. They're 2-0. They can't pass for 50 yards. And I think, like you say, it's only 2 games into the season. But I just truly believe just about 3 out of every 4 players the Commanders signed to replace the other players is a downgrade. I just think they should have ran it back except for a few tweaks.
Yeah, the Philadelphia part, Jumbo, I feel like we said this last year too. Like remember when they barely beat Cleveland and Sirianni's over there with the fans and the whole thing after the game? I mean, they couldn't move the football. They couldn't run it. They looked sluggish. Jalen Hurts actually kind of looked hurt. They had a couple of those games. It was the defense that really, by the time we got to midway through the season, it was like, wow, this defense is elite. And then the offense came around, had some moments, but really even in the postseason, it just did what it needed to do. It's funny about Philadelphia. When you watch them, it's like, okay, I don't get it. But if you're just watching O-line and D-line, they're dominant. Dominant. Got something to finish up with. It's quarterback. We'll talk about it when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com.
All right, happy Monday, everybody. Here's what's happening. The Commanders are bringing in running back Chase Edmonds and signing him to the practice squad following Austin Eckler's season-ending Achilles injury. And we take a look around the NFC East with Washington on a mini-bye after taking on the Packers on Thursday Night Football. Giants and Cowboys looked like it was straight out of action after an offensive explosion in the second half. 37 overtime thriller ends with Brandon Aubrey coming in clutch for the Cowboys as time expired in overtime. The Eagles, they handled the Chiefs in Fox's game of the week. Jalen Hurts with a subpar game, passing for only 101 yards and completing one pass beyond 6 yards from scrimmage. Saquon Barkley with a quiet 94 yards and one touchdown. Eagles win 20-17. To baseball, the Nats, they beat the Pittsburgh Pirates by a score of 4-3. Cade Cavalli giving up 3 runs right out of the gate, but was able to stop the bleeding. Nats get 3 back in the second and are able to come in clutch in the 8th when it mattered, with a Dalen Lyle double driving in James Wood. The boys in red and white shift their focus to the Braves tonight. Mitch Parker on the bump for the Nats versus Spencer Strider. First pitch at 6:45. Nats on deck with Charlie and Dave at 6:15. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch Den's office throughout all football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
Adam Schefter yesterday on ESPN's pregame show said and reported that in the draft last April, the Ravens were going to select Shedeur Sanders in the 5th round with the number 141 pick overall. But before the Ravens could turn the card in, Shedeur Sanders let the Ravens know, I don't want you to draft me. I want a chance to play soon in this league. Lamar Jackson's obviously the starter in Baltimore. It's insane to me that somebody who, is now into the 5th round would tell a team that, no, I don't want to be drafted. I know that sometimes 7th rounders will say, I'd prefer not to be drafted. I'm better off being an undrafted free agent. This was in the 5th round. Alex Smith listened to the report during ESPN's pregame show and said this.
I think this is insane. Right? Like, if this is true, I think this is crazy. Right? At this point, you're in the 5th round. I understand you had higher hopes, but you've dropped to the 5th round, and you're thinking about being a starting quarterback the next year. I think this is incredibly short-sighted. Like, if you're in this situation, You want to go to an organization that is going to develop you, right? Here you have the Baltimore Ravens, the model of stability in the NFL. This regime's been together for how many decades now? And actually has a track record to develop quarterbacks. Joe Flacco, Lamar, right? Instead, you choose the Cleveland Browns because you think you have a chance to start the next year. And mind you, the Cleveland Browns, who are on the opposite end of the spectrum when it comes to stability, right? This is the same organization that walked away from Baker Mayfield as the number one pick in the draft. What's he gone on to do? Oh, he's only led the NFL in touchdown passes since joining the Bucs, right? How many there's been 700 starting quarterbacks in the last 20 years for the Cleveland Browns. This makes zero sense. You want to go to a good organization where you can develop and reach your potential. That
was Alex Smith yesterday. By the way, Dylan Gabriel did get into the game yesterday. He is the backup to Flacco, not Shedeur Sanders. All right, done for the day. Back tomorrow again, 3:30. Quinn Talks. We'll learn more, I would assume, about the Jaden Daniels injury. Chris Russell's next.